Right, well, welcome back. Today I'm having a go at a little clean job here and looking at continuing on with this alternator conversion that I started a while back. Now this is an alternator, a Bosch service unit JXA508. It's a 50 amp alternator and came off a variety of Mazda vehicles. For example, a 1600 Mazda Capella, years 70 to 78, a 929, years 73 to 79. It came off RX2s and RX4s, so it's a fairly common alternator from the 70s. It's 50 amps, which should be quite adequate for this car. Now, I did make up the bracket there, extended bracket, and also turned up a little spacer to go from the bracket to the alternator. When I made this bracket, I didn't really know what sort of an alternator I was going to use, but as it turned out, that spacer needed to fill the hole up there because it was a little bit bigger than the bolts. Ironically, the way it sits on the front mount, it actually lines up perfectly with the pulleys. So had a little bit of luck there. Now probably the major part of the exercise now will be making the adjusting bracket that mounts on the existing adjuster for the old generator and out to this hole here. So I've tried to do this a little bit scientifically, so to speak. So what I've done is I've measured the distance between the bracket there and the pivot point, and from that pivot point out to the adjusting hole out there. So this alternator, when it moves, it'll pivot through a small arc off that point there. So I was able to map the location of the groove that we've got to put in the bracket. I've made it, I haven't made it, but I'm going to make it so that it's got a lot of adjustment in it. Now the other measurement that I needed to take was a measurement from the fixing point for the adjusting bracket and the adjusting bracket hole out here at its lowest point and at its highest point, so I could get the correct distance. So I've mapped that out on a piece of cardboard, and I'll give you a look at that now. Now I've measured this point from here to here at 5.5 inches, and across from the pivot point out to the adjusting point at 7 inches. Right, so on this piece of steel with all these holes in it, I found that from that hole there to that hole there is exactly 7 inches. So I'm able to, using this end here as a pivot point, and this one is the distance, was able to map out the arc on the piece of cardboard. So what I've done is I've taken a point at the bottom straight up to the top there at 5.5 inches, and from what I can gather, that is directly above the bottom point here, that's directly above it at a 90-degree angle here. So that made that fairly simple. So taking the piece of steel, I've mapped out around the arc the position of the groove that we've got to make. So then I've just taken a generous outline around the holes there and plan to cut that out of a piece of about 1/8, I'd say, metal to make it nice and strong. So that'll be the next challenge. What I'll probably do is drill a whole bunch of holes through on that arc there and then file them out. It's a little bit too curved to cut it with the grinding wheel. So I don't have any steel for that right here at the moment, so I'll get some of that and continue on and show you what we end up with. Right, well there's that bracket cut out in the rough. Got a few holes drilled there. I'll file that slot out and I'll tidy all the rest of that up. It's just rough cut at the moment, so I'll continue on with that and show you what we end up with. Right, well that's that bracket all finished now, apart from a bit of paint. That's all worked out very well. All the measurements proved to be correct. The alternator swings down through that space there perfectly. Probably made it a little bit on the big side, but you never know, might need it. So that's all mounted up beautifully there. Just to recap, we've had a custom made bracket and a custom made spacer. Comes sleeve to fill out that larger alternator hole, and also had to machine up a sleeve to go in there. But no, that's all worked out well, pretty happy with that. So that should, once that's painted, really look the part. So I'll call that a wrap. Thanks for your interest, and yeah, that was quite a good little job done.